Okay, it's our Wednesday again, and we're meeting for our optional live online session. Let me just share my screen so we can use the presentation that I've kind of prepared to give us a little bit of structure for today. Right now, you should be seeing my screen. So the format is very similar to what we've done before, but let's have a look of some of the key things from this week. And as usual, um, this week I'm really focusing on one chapter, and it's gonna be the chapter on the autonomic nervous system. Um, I want to start though, before we dive into kind of a nutshell summary of the weekly lecture material, with a brief discussion about a couple of housekeeping things since we're approaching end of the semester, and also highlighting how this week's homework looks like. So we're almost at the finish line. We're getting really close to the end of the semester, and I'm already getting some messages from students who are enthusiastically finishing things a little bit ahead of the schedule, which is fine. And one of the questions that I keep hearing is to do with that, oh, well, what should I do regarding the end of semester feedback activity? So as you notice, the end of semester feedback activity is one of the activities that I'm asking you to complete. You have until the last week to do so. It adds towards the points towards your final grade. You won't see on your version on the Canvas when you log in a link to the feedback, because actually you will have received the feedback message as email sent to your college email address. Um, I believe it's titled something along the lines as CGCC teacher evaluation for, and then this course, I think that obviously we are doing 201. So you would see an email sent to your personal email address. The reason why we're doing it this way is that that ensures the confidentiality. I will actually see the results of your feedback only at the very end of the semester, when the semester has ended, so you can share openly and freely your experience on this course. Like I said, I do require you to complete this evaluation, and the reason why I'm requiring you to complete this evaluation is that it's a really important part of how I get assessed in my job. So it's important that students have the voice, and that students get to share what elements of the course are working well and what elements we can change as well. Having said that, like I said, we place a lot of value and a lot of importance on that. All of the feedback goes also to my supervisors. So I would encourage you, of course, to be honest, but also to be mindful that it is kind of a big deal survey. So use the language that you would feel comfortable with my bosses reading. Once you complete this survey, and like I said, you'll find the link to it from the email, make sure to capture a screenshot of the end page when you've submitted it. And this screenshot is what you will be uploading to the end of semester feedback activity. If for some reason you miss out on capturing that screenshot, you can just go to that end of semester feedback activity also and just type in that this was the date, this was the time when I completed the survey. Again, it's gonna still remain anonymous, but it gives me an idea that you have actually done so, because it's really, really, really important for me. I'm aiming to hear from every student in my class how this class worked out. So please, please, please consider completing this survey. Kind of connecting to the end of the semester discussions as well. Let's have a look at what we've got lined up for this week. This week we're looking at chapter 15. And on chapter 15, I literally have only the quiz for you to complete because there's very little anatomy that I wouldn't have covered in another week already. So I decided to keep it just to a quiz. You have until end of the week to complete this quiz. Because we don't have so much homework to do this week, this is a really good week to get caught up. If you missed any assignments before, all you have to do this week is to message me, and I will be happy to reopen or give extensions for any assignments that you might have missed. The reason why I ask you to do it this week is that at the end of this week, I will be adding 0 marks to any assignments that you might have missed so that we get that final grade predicted calculation working correctly on Canvas. If you do not get 0 marks and you haven't submitted work, that calculation doesn't work correctly. So that's why this is the week for us to get your grades tidied up. This is the week to contact me, get any missing assignments that you still want to count towards your final grade taken care of, and then we will make sure that we get your grades up to date and be accurate representation of where you're at. So that was kind of, I guess, that the household or housekeeping matters that I really wanted to talk about this week. Let's have a look of this week's learning material in a very, very condensed way. Obviously, you have full lecture videos available on the Canvas, but we've been looking at nervous system and we've been looking at different parts of the nervous system. And this week, our focus was on, or is on, the autonomic nervous system. So let's have a look what we can learn about autonomic nervous system. As the name proposes, these are largely subconscious responses that your nervous system does. You don't have to think about doing these responses. They're usually involuntary responses that happen automatically without your conscious thinking of them. Things that fall under the control of autonomic nervous system contain things such as smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and many glands. And if we think of the purpose of autonomic nervous system in a bigger scale and related to the concepts that we have learned on this course, I think that it's going to be easy for us to notice that this has to do a lot with maintaining homeostasis in your body. So you remember homeostasis was all about maintaining consistent internal environment, and how we do it is through a lot of these subconscious responses. For example, I'm just highlighting few from here. From the smooth muscle, we find smooth muscle around your blood vessels, and we can regulate the blood vessel diameter to adjust your blood pressure to keep it at that ideal range. And that's how we're able to maintain the homeostasis of the blood pressure, for example. Same goes for the cardiac muscle. We're able to do changes in your cardiac action, how your heart works based on the body's needs, so that again we're able to maintain the homeostasis. And these things as well happen subconsciously. With the glands, there's many different kinds of glands. If I think of our endocrine glands, our hormones that are released from those, a lot of that again happens subconsciously. We're maintaining the homeostasis of the body through these changes. So really the goal is to ensure that our body remains in an optimal conditions to maintain activities that we're doing. I think that this one really brings us again to put everything into the kind of bigger picture. I'm just going to mention really quickly few words about the somatic nervous system. We had a look of the autonomic nervous system a little bit, and I've kind of summarized it here below. But let's have a look of the somatic nervous system. Somatic nervous system focuses especially to the innervation of the skeletal muscles. And when we look at the somatic nervous system and compare it to the autonomic nervous system, there's distinct differences, even in the level of the anatomy of the structures that are involved. So what we'll end up seeing in somatic nervous system is that the cell body of these nerve cells that pass messages, in this case to the skeletal muscles, the cell body is located within the central nervous system. In this diagram, you'll see it in the spinal cord that we're seeing a cross-sectional view. And there's going to be just a single action that directs the message directly to the skeletal muscle. If we compare that to the autonomic nervous system, in autonomic nervous system, rather than having just a single nerve, we're actually dealing with now two neuron chain that's involved. So we have preganglionic neuron that has a long axon. It can be long or short axon, and then that joins into that autonomic ganglion where there's a connection from this first neuron to the second neuron, and the second neuron that actually reaches the target organ or target structure is known as a postganglionic. So we have preganglionic and we have postganglionic neuron. So that's something that you'll see as a difference between these two branches, the somatic and autonomic, even at the level of the structure. We see other differences as well. Somatic nervous system has just mainly stimulatory effect. It activates things to happen and uses acetylcholine to do so. Whereas autonomic nervous system, it can either activate things, but it can also inhibit things from happening in your body. And you remember that in autonomic one, we had both pre and post ganglionic communication. It can be through acetylcholine on both, or in case of post ganglionic release, we see also norepinephrine involved in there. If we think about the somatic and autonomic nervous system like we've done before, I think one thing that we sometimes miss with this approach is the realization that there's a lot of overlap between these two. So even though we cover a lot of things in your body as these chunks, remember everything's related to everything. So we see that there's a lot of regulation and coordination of both systems at the higher level, at the brain centers. But we see also nerve fibers for both somatic and autonomic functions, also at the level of spinal and cranial nerves. And I think if we think of the physiology, moving away just from pure anatomy, one of the things that we end up seeing is that there's really overlap between these two. Most physiological processes that would be relevant here can involve both. So that brings us back to this diagram that we saw before, and I want to move the focus on these two branches of the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system can often be divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So let's have a look of those together a little bit. And I think that one of the things that we often see when we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system is that it gets described as this rest and digest system, whereas the sympathetic division is often described as fight or flight responses. So let's dive into a little bit more into detail of these both and see what kind of physiological changes we see when one or another is activated. I also want to point out that there is actually always this balance of these two systems as well. Like I said, we end up seeing that the end goal is the homeostasis. So we're seeing the interaction between the two systems to maintain us in that sweet spot where we want to be to maintain consistent internal environment. So I think that one way to think about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is really to relate it, the physiological changes that we're seeing, to what are the functions of these two branches. So when we're talking about sympathetic nervous system being activated, these are physiological responses that aim for either our survival through fighting against the threat that might exist, or helping us escape away from that situation where that threat might exist. So when you're fighting for your survival or preparing to escape a risky situation, where we want to direct the resources in our body has to do with things like directing blood to the skeletal muscles, so you can do those movements, whether it's escaping or it's preparing to confront the risk. We also see that the changes like your heart rate going up, your blood pressure going up, probably breathing rate also going up. So you're really getting ready to act. While your sympathetic nervous system is activated, the immediate concern is to do with that fighting for survival or escaping that threatening situation. So we're not really worried about long-term maintenance functions in your body. So things like urinary system or digestive system are not going to be activated while the sympathetic nervous system is active. Those are kind of maintenance functions, long-term functions. We're not worried about those. We're directing those resources to deal with the immediate challenge at hand. If we think of the parasympathetic nervous system instead, one way how I describe it for my students, and I think that now especially relevantly since we just had a Thanksgiving, is to think of what were you doing after the Thanksgiving meal? You were probably sitting down and relaxing. So that's when your parasympathetic nervous system would have been very active. So these are those rest and digest responses. While your parasympathetic nervous system is active, you're not really dealing with an active threat or danger. You're focusing your energies for body's maintenance functions. So, for example, your heart rate probably is going to be lower, breathing rate lower. Blood actually gets directed to the abdominal area where we're doing that digestion at the intestines, and we want to capture the nutrients and energy from these products that our digestive system is working through. Other system that's going to be highly active is going to be your urinary system. So we're filtering blood, removing materials, producing urine. So at this point, we're not really directing resources for anything that's requiring like active action against a threat or a danger. We're at the peaceful state. We have time to do those body maintenance functions. Like I said, especially digestive and urinary system can be particularly active. That's where we're directing our resources to. I think that gives you a good nutshell idea about these two branches of autonomic nervous system. What's interesting to me when we're talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, it's not just physiological differences that we see between these two branches. We actually see also a lot of anatomical differences, both in terms of what site these nerve fibers originate from. So we see that a lot of these nerves of the parasympathetic nervous system are either from your cranium, so from the very close to the brain, or at the very end of the spinal cord from your sacral region. Whereas the sympathetic nervous system branch nerves are typically from the thoracic region. We're also seeing differences in the length of the nerve fibers between the two. We're seeing also differences where the ganglia for these pre and post synaptic nerve fibers are located on these two systems. So there's a lot to unpack, and not just physiologically, but also when it comes to the anatomy. If we think of the autonomic nervous system overall, even though it is this unconscious, doesn't require intentional attention, it is worthwhile to note that there is still a connection with the central nervous system. So there is control of the autonomic nervous system functions also through the central nervous system when it comes to the brainstem and spinal cord, hypothalamus, and cerebral cortex. So these do modify the autonomic nervous system responses, but they do it subconsciously. And I have a little bit more detail on each of these in the next few slides. I'm not going to go into great amount of detail. You can refer to your lecture material. You can refer to the pre-recorded videos that I have there to help you. But I did want to highlight that even though autonomic nervous system was this subconscious system, there is also control that relates to the central nervous system as well. So I think that that's kind of a good illustration of this theme that we keep seeing and why it is important for us to realize that no body system really exists on its own. Everything is slightly connected. In addition to providing you these short verbal descriptions, I think your textbook does a rather good job of kind of illustrating how this autonomic nervous system can be controlled at few different levels, also showing that visually. So I'll refer you to those materials to have a further look of that detail. This next slide, really, I wasn't initially planning to include, but I'm leaving it there since I had done it. But that's really referring us to the next week's material when we're talking about our special senses. So we'll spend some time talking about the special senses. We'll focus on a few of the most important ones. But I think that that's going to be the last chapter where our journey of revising the important things about the nervous system will come to be. So this has been a little quicker review of the key points. Like I said, this week you don't have a huge amount of homework, so it's an ideal week for you to get caught up with anything that you might have missed in the past, any assignments that you might wish to recheck or reattempt or have reopened. Just message me. I do have quite a few messages to work through, but I'll try to do them in the next few hours, so you still have time to address anything that you might want to address, get those things done this week. Since we're getting so close to the end of the semester, I also really would ask you again that if you can, please consider completing that course feedback. Like I said, you will see that having been emailed to your college email address from the district. I don't have quite detailed knowledge what that email would have included, since I'm not a student, I don't get to see it. But please try to get that done. That would be a great help for me. Since we've gone through the review of chapter 15 so quickly, I think that that gives us a good chance that we can spend a little bit of time having a look at what the homework assignments may entail this week. So let's have a look of that together. Let me just pull up appropriate screen that I'm gonna share with you. And at this time, you should be able to see my screen of this course's learning modules. I'm just going to change the view so that it's comparable to what you would see as a student As your instructor, I have two different things there. But we are now, I believe, at week 15. And for week 15, we're getting there. Week 15, like I said, you only have one assignment to complete, the chapter 15 quiz. So this is a really good week to get caught up with anything that you might have missed. Saying that, I do encourage you, and I believe that those emails were sent out, and you will keep receiving multiple emails until you get those done. Please, please, please look for this course's student evaluation email from your college email address and complete that. And as you complete it, take the screenshot of the final page and upload that page here to the end of the semester feedback assignment, and I'll make sure that you get credit for completion of that as well. I really would need you to complete it. It would be great help. So please, 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 even if you provided feedback on other times, like I did midterm feedback and so on, this is the big feedback that really, really matters to us. If for some reason you're not able to capture the screenshot of your final page, you can still here upload it to the comments that I completed the feedback, and then just enter the date and time when you did it, so that I have a little bit of an idea that you completed it. If it's asking you to attach a file, I realize that this is a bug in our system. You can literally upload any file at all. It's not gonna be important. If you put a picture of a cat, I'll probably give you extra points for that. But you can just put a random picture. This is what I'm looking for, either the screenshot of the completion or the note that you completed. I think that if you do it through text entry, then you don't have to attach a picture. Let's see. Yep, and that works nicely. I will be kind of chasing after for students who don't complete this, because it is so important for us to hear back from you and get your feedback. So having said all that, I'm just stopping sharing the screen for a second so I can jump back and we can go and have a look of this week's quiz real quickly together. So that was the chapter 15 quiz. Let me pull it up on my screen and then I'll share it with you. We've been working really hard this semester, and so there's a lot to browse through. Let me again share my screen with you. So you should be seeing the chapter 15 quiz. Like I said, it's not a long quiz. It's important for me that you have time to focus on the learning and not worry about the assessment as much. So let's have a look at least some of the questions that could come up. So we're now being asked that which division of the nervous system has two nerve fibers connecting central nervous system to an effector. Obviously, based on this week's material, this would be our autonomic division of the nervous system. And again, you will be able to use your textbook, use your notes as you're tackling these questions. The next one is kind of a drag and drop assignment. We're being able to assign labels to whether they relate to somatic or autonomic nervous system. So let's have a look of those. We see that a somatic nervous system is typically voluntary, under voluntary control, to do with skeletal muscle activation. And if you really think of what somatic nervous system is all about, it's largely to do with the movement of the body. If we look at the autonomic nervous system instead, we saw that that was very much involuntary. Some examples of that would fall under the autonomic nervous system includes things like activation of glands. It doesn't just have to be endocrine glands, hormone glands. It can be also exocrine glands like sweat glands, lacrimal glands, activation of the muscles that are responsible for your goosebumps. We talked about those earlier this semester, the concept of piloerector muscles. So erector papillae. So those would be also under autonomic nervous system. Intestinal muscle activation. So regulating digestion, absorption, all those processes in our digestive system. Remember, with the autonomic nervous system, this could be either promoting a change to happen or inhibit a change from happening at the target organ. Really, a lot of the time, autonomic nervous system responses have to do with the movement of materials throughout the body, whether it's glands, whether it's intestines, and so on. Let's have a look of what else do we have for this. Here we have a complete sentence assignment. We're seeing that the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system increases alertness, and the parasympathetic division has a calming effect on the body. So remember how our sympathetic branch was often referred as this fight or flight responses, whereas our parasympathetic responses were those rest and digest responses. So that kind of relates to what we just reviewed earlier on. Here I have another one, drag and drop assignment. We're seeing different functions that fall under the two. And you remember sympathetic was the activation, the fight or flight responses. So we're seeing, in addition to that fight or flight, things like running, stress, excitement fall under that. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system was all about that rest and digest. So those body's maintenance systems being active. So digestion, defecation, diuresis, things like that fall under there. What else can we see? We've got a little bit of a complete sentence questions here. We're seeing in the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system, the preganglionic nerve fibers are short, while in the parasympathetic division, the preganglionic nerve fibers are relatively long instead. So again, kind of way to connect not just the physiology, but the anatomy that goes with that. I have here further questions about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. We're getting to drag and drop. So let's look at the parasympathetic first. These are things like activation of digestive organs, storage of energy, decreased pulmonary airflow, so you're not breathing respiration at that very high rate. It's kind of more calming rate. Urinary bladder is going to be activated. These were those rest and digest responses. Sympathetic nervous system instead were those fight or flight responses. Some of the changes that we will see include increased heart rate, increased blood flow to the skeletal muscles. Your urinary system will go down, so reduced urinary output, but we will see increased pulmonary airflow, so you're breathing faster, deeper, preparing for that fight or flight response. Again, your textbook will guide you if you have any questions about those. Here's a question: which nervous system controls gland, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle? Based on all that we learned, we see that this is going to be our autonomic nervous system. Which division of the autonomic nervous system is referred as the rest and digest division? Remember, that was our parasympathetic. Our sympathetic would be that fight or flight responses. So that gives you a really good idea of what to expect when it comes to this week's assignments. Like I said, this week is a great week to get caught up with any work that you might have possibly missed and make sure that you're in a comfortable place with getting those in. So I really encourage you to do that. And very briefly, I'm just gonna share this again. A reminder, look for your email for the course feedback, for your teacher feedback, and complete that from your email. There's no link on your Canvas for it. You have to go to your college email to find the link. Make sure that you choose this course's feedback, complete it, take a screenshot of the last picture, and upload it to the end of semester feedback. We do still have next week when we're going to be talking about sense organs, and then we have our on a finals week, our last set of exams. I'm going to pull up once more our PowerPoint. I think we've accomplished everything that I was planning for us to do today. I'm glad that it was a little bit a faster paced session, so you have time to focus on other things. Like I said, I will keep reminding you of the course feedback. Sooner you get it in, the better, so that it's not one of the more chores that you have to take care of. Remember, that counts towards your final grade. I would really appreciate if you have positive experiences from this course and you would like to share it with us there. We also did talk a little bit about the plan for the week. Like I said, if you are missing any assignments and still wish to attempt those, this would be the week to do that. We did review really briefly the material from chapter 5, and we had a look of the homework that we have for that. Because the homework being so short, this is a great week to catch up on any missing material when it comes to that. That does really bring us to the end of everything that I had planned for this week. Please remember, I'm here to help. It has been a pleasure to work with you. I'm still glad that we get to see at least probably 2 times in asynchronous setting for these review sessions. As always, though, even though this is an asynchronous class, it doesn't mean that you're on your own. You can reach out to me anytime, and I am here to help you to succeed. Thank you for joining me for this session, and I hope you have a very happy week. And I look forward to another great week of learning with you. Until next time, bye.